This beast of a smartphone in my hands here is the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra. I've been using this pretty much since it launched, but in this video I want to give you a longer term review. So I want to talk to you about the good, the bad, and my overall thoughts having used this device since launch. Let's find out more about the Note 20 Ultra 5G here on EMKWAN Reviews. So the Note series has traditionally been one of those interesting smartphones from Samsung that really focuses heavily on the specs, and it's got quite a following over the years. So this year's Note 20 Ultra is very much in line with that initial concept of the Note series. Now this year we also got the Note 20 and the Note 20 Ultra, and in my opinion I think the Note 20 Ultra fits probably better to the original embodiment of what the Note series is. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on here in this review. What I've also done to make your life easier is included some timestamps in the description bar below, so you'll be able to swipe through. Let's start off first of all by talking about the design. After having used this for a month, there are small attention to details that I think Samsung have paid with the Note 20 Ultra that really stand out. To begin with, this color, this mystic bronze color, most of you know wasn't initially my first choice. I was actually moving towards mystic white as my first choice. But over the last month and a half, I've grown to really appreciate this color. It is absolutely stunning. And what I love about this is that you have this matte finish with sort of subtle mystic bronze attention to detail all around the device. That mystic bronze color, some people have said is quite feminine. In 2020, I think both males and females can dig this, and I love how it changes with the color of the light. I mean, you'll see a different hue of this mystic bronze color depending on the lighting condition. And that's certainly one of the things that I think looks premium about the Note 20 Ultra. Next, let's talk about that display, because it's the display that we pretty much have come to expect from Samsung, and they haven't disappointed in the Note 20 Ultra. It's a beautiful dynamic AMOLED display, 6.9 inches, 1440 by 3088 pixels with a 496 ppi density. It's a beautiful and stunning display, really is, and it does have this slight curvature on the side, which I haven't really been annoyed by. It still feels comfortable in the hand. But overall, the colors, the vibrancy, the accuracy on that display is absolutely stunning. You'll notice that when you're using it with media, watching YouTube videos, even when you're playing games. Now, one of the big standout features on this display is that refresh rate. It does support up to 120 Hz for the refresh rate. There are options to tone this down to preserve on battery life, but honestly, once you're playing games like Asphalt, which are quite graphic intensive, but also great at showing off that display, you'll really appreciate that. Now, another thing to mention on the display is the fact that you do have an under the display optical sensor. Now, this sensor is pretty easy to set up. I'm not a big fan of this sensor though, because I do notice a slight lag. Now, I've set this up so it will support the face recognition to unlock, and more times than none, it normally unlocks the device with the facial recognition than it does with the fingerprint scanner. Next, let's take a moment to talk about the all-important performance, and this is where it might get a bit tricky. So this particular model that I have is the global version, and it comes with the Exynos 990 chipset. It's also available in some other markets like North America with the Snapdragon 865 Plus. So here's the thing, I haven't had a chance to compare myself the Exynos 990 chipset Note 20 Ultra with a Snapdragon version. But there are some reported differences in terms of performance between those two chips. A simple Google search will show that up, and also multiple other tech YouTubers, some of whom I've spoken to, have managed to handle both of them, have reported the same. The Exynos 990 chipset, for the most part, does a reasonable job. I haven't really noticed anything in terms of performance, lag, issues. What I have noticed, however, is the battery drain on the Note 20 Ultra is slightly more than what I was expecting. Now again, that might be dependent on my use case, it might be dependent on the battery, but that's the only thing that really pops up for me, and that might be connected somehow to the chipset. But in terms of multitasking, using multiple windows, graphic intensive gaming, it's performed pretty well. This comes with 12 GB of RAM, and it's more than enough for the multitasking level of activity that you might expect from the Note 20 series. So really quickly, I want to talk to you about the OS. This runs Android 10. It's powered by Samsung's own skin on top of that, which is One UI 2.5. For the most part, I've had no issues with this. In the past, I have been critical about One UI. This is a personal choice and I don't expect everybody to agree with me. I would prefer a much more Android stock-like experience, and I felt in the past One UI didn't deliver on that. However, credit where credit is due, I think Samsung have done an incredibly good job at refining, just simplifying One UI to the level where it's actually much closer now to a stock-like Android experience. And over the last month and a half, using both the Note 20 Ultra and the brand new Samsung Galaxy Fold 2, which I'll talk about in a separate video, I've come to respect One UI. So two areas within One UI that did annoy me. The first one is where you get apps like the Galaxy Wearable app, which seems to be divided into different chunks. Now, I'm not calling it bloatware, but it certainly feels sometimes like bloatware. And the issue then is that you can have little apps that are running in the background, which, it'd just be nicer to have everything streamlined into one or two, or just fewer apps in general for certain features. The other area is where you get features doubling. So for example, you have Samsung's own Quick Share, and then you also have Google's Nearby Share as well. And finally, the whole Bixby versus Google Assistant thing, I still can't seem to gel with Bixby. Now, somewhat related to the software is the S Pen. The S Pen is certainly one of those features that makes the Note 20 series as a whole stand out from a lot of the other smartphones on the market. And the S Pen is also one of those things that I feel some people love and use all the time, and others might not and simply never take out. Now, I kind of fall in the category of the other side, but I am appreciating the S Pen and all of the functions related to it much more after a month of use. So initially when I started off, I hardly ever took the S Pen out, but as I started to get used to it, play around with it, there were certain things that really stood out for me. Number one, we have a reduced latency now on the S Pen. That means that combined with that 120 Hertz refresh display, you're gonna get almost a paper-like experience, particularly when you're jotting notes down. It really feels and reacts in a way almost like paper, pen to paper, and it does a very, very good job. When we got the Galaxy Note 10, we had the introduction of air gestures. The Note 20 Ultra builds on that, so we have the original air gestures plus some others. This is cool in some ways, particularly when using the camera function, for example. Over the month and a half that I've had the device, I've certainly found that those features have come in handy. Next, let's take a moment to talk about that camera setup. This is something that I've had a lot of fun with. So just for refresh, on the back we have a triple camera. That's made up of a 108 megapixel f1.8 with laser autofocus and OIS, a 12 megapixel f3.0, which is a periscope telephoto that has OIS with 5 times optical zoom and 50 times hybrid zoom, more on that in a moment. And the third camera lens is a 12 megapixel f2.2 with the ultra wide. Now those cameras together produce some really, really good shots. As can be expected, with Samsung's image processing, the overall quality, both in normal lighting and in low lighting, across those different levels from ultra wide all the way to that maximum 50x zoom, for the most part is actually very good. I'm glad Samsung decided to remove that 100x level zoom that they had with the S20 Ultra series. I feel 50x is more than enough. It needs to be done well enough for people to appreciate and use it, and with the Note 20 Ultra, for the most part, it certainly does that. It still is quite grainy at that maximum zoom, but it's still much better than 100x zoom, for example. Now, as far as the end results are concerned, as you can see from some of these examples, the Note 20 Ultra camera does a very good job. I've reviewed a lot of smartphones this year, and for me personally, I would put this at least in the top 5 of camera performances from a smartphone. For the most part, the color accuracy, the dynamic range is very good with the images, the details are certainly there. There is a slight oversaturation with certain colors for some reason. It's not that apparent, but if you compare it with the naked eye, you'll certainly notice that. The other thing to mention is low light performance. With ultra night mode, you do get very, very good low light performance with this camera. So this year, Samsung have also upped the quality of the video on the Note 20 Ultra, and this is certainly noticeable. So to begin with, you have now 8K video at 24 frames per second or 4K at up to 60 frames per second. Now, as far as the Pro Video mode is concerned, this is something that you can access on the Note 20 Ultra, and it gives you a ton of really extensive controls over your video capture. Really minute controls of things like zoom speed, focus, white balance, exposure, and much more. And the audio controls there will also allow you to direct the built-in mics on the smartphone to capture audio from external mics or earbuds as well. On the front, you've got that punch hole design, which houses the front-facing camera. It's a 10 megapixel camera with an f2.2. For portrait selfies, it's gonna do a reasonable job, and you'll also be able to record video 4K at 30 or 60 frames per second with that. Next, let's talk about the battery, which is a pretty important part. Traditionally, battery life on the Note series has always been more than adequate. On the Note 20 Ultra, you have a 4,500 milliamp hour battery, and it supports a range of different charging features, including fast charging. You've also got fast Qi wireless charging at 15 watts, and it also supports reverse wireless charging at 4.5 watts. Now, what is interesting is the battery life on the Note 20 Ultra is probably the one area where I kind of expected better. Now, I'm not sure if that is down to the battery itself or that connection that I mentioned earlier on with the Exynos 990 chipset. It certainly felt that way, particularly when you view certain apps and their battery usage. It does feel like the battery on the Note 20 Ultra is just at that fine line, for me at least, as a pretty power user when it comes to my smartphones. I was expecting slightly better battery life. Last but not least is the all-important pricing and whether or not I think the Note 20 Ultra is worth it. So here's the thing, the Note series in general has always been the more premium range of smartphone from the Samsung range, and that's because it packs in a lot of specs, and it also has one of the unique features of being different from the other smartphones on the market, and that is through the functionality of the S Pen. The Note 20 Ultra this year certainly continues that, and what is interesting is that if you compare the current asking price in the market here, which is anywhere from between 3,500 to a maximum of 4,000 dirhams for the Note 20 Ultra, it's a pretty decent amount. It's not cheap, but what you get with the Note 20 Ultra, it's certainly worth considering. So look, the display on this I think is absolutely fantastic. The all-important S Pen, if you're going to be somebody that uses the S Pen, then you will really appreciate that in the Note 20 Ultra. Putting all those factors together, I do think that the Note 20 Ultra is certainly a worthwhile device with what it offers. Now, if you're coming from a Note 10 looking to upgrade to the Note 20 Ultra, it probably might be worth considering waiting out a little to see what next year throws up. But if you're using an older generation Note, then it might be worth seriously considering what the Note 20 Ultra has to offer. That's a wrap. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Have you picked up the Note 20 Ultra? Are you tempted to pick up the Note 20 Ultra? I'd love to know your thoughts. Plus, if you're new around here, be sure to smash that subscribe button, hit like to see more videos like this. And if you can, follow me over on Instagram where I vlog daily through my IG stories. That's it from me for now. I will see you in the next video here on EMKWAN Reviews. Until then, stay safe, peace and blessings.